I am Dana Stevens from Patterson, New Jersey. I have a couple of YouTube accounts. One's called Contagious Music. The other is called Average Bro, spelled like broham
Yeah,
without the
yeah.
ham. And that's
But
all you
plenty
need
of
to
ham.
know. But plenty of ham. You do see perhaps a saxophone behind me. I do feature my fingers on saxophones occasionally, but this is about what's in our brains for me. So that's it.
Mm. All right, my name's Peter Stoltzman, and I'm everywhere online as Peter John Stoltzman. I'm a pianist, educator, uh, have dabbled as an activist, and I run a nonprofit called Colorado Music Bridge.
Yeah. And I'm
Lucas.
Lucas, and I'm also online. I'm known as Lucas Brian Vesley. I have a YouTube channel on Instagram. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation with you guys today, and I'm really looking forward to having some fun.
Absolutely.
Talking about taboo topics.
We don't have we don't yet have a like a a moniker, but I think if we continue doing this, we should come up with a name. I was thinking, how I think it was Seinfeld who does like comedians in cars having coffee.
Right.
Oh yeah,
we could do like musicians on Zoom talking about real shit or something.
Eating healthy whole foods.
I don't know what. But guys, I just just being in this space together and introducing ourselves, and it just brings me back to when we all first connected, and makes me feel grateful to have jazz music in the world as a as a vehicle for being creative, and also to have institutions like Berkeley as a place where people come together and share that that like that pursuance, to use a phrase, but yeah, I mean that brings people together, and
yeah,
I think,
what a great community.
A lot of times when I start conversing about bigger issues and the world and the things that I feel frustrated about or question or want to critique, I'm a lot of times like feeling kind of critical of institutions, but
Rightfully
also
so.
Recognize that they're not all bad. All right, and even Berkeley, right? It's it's a mixed bag in lots of ways, but having a place where there's shared, I don't know, like a shared pursuit, and people come together, and there's like layered mentorship and layered connectivity and collaboration. That's a powerful thing. So anyway, that's a backdrop for us for sure.
Yeah, and room for nuanced conversations that actually help us address like uncomfortable things that may help us advance forward as a culture. I think that's really important. There's so many topics now that are so difficult to talk about, depending on what your background is, where you come from. And so it's so nice to be connected to a community of people, musicians, artists that aren't afraid to have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. And I think these conversations are usually easier to have with people that you know. Facebook is full of people who kind of don't know each other, maybe vaguely know each other, talking about pretty personal sometimes and pretty really important and divisive often topics. So maybe amongst friends is where these conversations should happen in the open more frequently than between people who are almost just likely to hate each other from the get-go because of where they stand. You mean you have nuance on systemic racism? for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I dig it. Um, and with that also in mind, I think like when you care about somebody, um, then like when you get into conflict with them, you are much more likely to persevere through that conflict. You know, I've um, been through that for 18 years now with my wife, and we've been through some rowdy conflicts, man. Not rowdy physically, but like emotionally, really, really
Mm.
intense. And because we care so deeply about each other, we're always committed to finding a way through. And in that sense, like I've grown and matured so much as a result of that. I've
Mm.
learned so much about her, about myself, and just about like being human. Um, and that's also helped with a lot of therapy,
Mm.
good counselors,
Yeah.
different perspectives, but
Yeah.
Mm.
just being in that space of like, okay, we may get uncomfortable, we may get real uncomfortable.
Here we are.
We
Mm.
we may feel like fuck you, or like I don't even want to be around you right now. And then, but because we care, we're willing to persevere through that and find our way to understanding. And I think that's that's like so crucial and so kind of lacking in the public forums, especially social media forums, where people don't care enough about each other, so they're
Mm.
less interested in really understanding and getting to some core connection place than they are in
Mm.
whatever pounding their
Yeah.
points.
Yeah, so true.
And I'm certainly guilty of pounding my points sometimes.
Oh, so am I, my friend. Oh, so am I. Yeah. So, how does that personal relationship you're talking about with your wife in the micro transfer itself into the macro? If you want to dive into that particular topic
Mm.
first, perhaps.
Yeah,
Nice
well,
question, Data.
it's the segue to the micro macro, which for me is like a big theme. But yeah, I don't know how, you know, but I do like oftentimes think, God, man, this country needs like really great marriage counseling right now.
Mm. Mm.
That's
Yeah.
what we need, man. We need to like
Yeah.
shut the fuck up and listen. Do some active listening where you're restating,
Mm.
understanding what the other person is, restating and correcting until the other person is convinced that you understand where they're coming from.
So
Mm.
we might need to take a couple steps back from even that because I don't think
Mm. Mm.
either side in the macro sense is even seeing the other side as worth talking to or even human in some cases. Everyone who voted for Trump is fucking racist. Excuse my
Dude,
language. There it is. The
and there's
first
like
bomb.
this
I dropped
disconnect with
one already.
family
Or
values. This disconnect with family values, right? These days. I mean, I feel like there's this hard left push to like stomp out kind of like the traditional family that existed, you know, 50 years ago, and just to be liberated. And it doesn't matter if it's, this combination or that combination, but there's something to be said. And for like a traditional family and how it's functioned in history, and the facts that we know about how that is played out, and when there's a lack of a family, the results of that. So
Yes, and there's a lot of critique on the traditional family model as well, right? Because if you want
mm,
to go back in history, the traditional family model is about basically male ownership of females.
mm,
Um, it was actually literally ownership, right? The the female's father would provide a dowry, right? And and basically, it's like giving his daughter to a man, and there's lots of shows about that,
Mm, mm,
especially
mm, mm.
like fun dramas about that, and right,
Oh
like
my
this whole
God.
what's the new one, the British drama with the that's got a whole bunch of black families in this whole drama now too. Uh,
You
it's
got
all the
me.
it's all the rage now. I just watched a couple
Really?
episodes with my wife.
On
And,
Netflix?
yeah, yeah.
Not
They like
Atlanta.
no, 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 no. It's like a
Oh.
British, you know,
Oh.
drama, period piece kind of. But it's it's a Shonda Rhimes production.
Hmm.
Shonda Rhimes is she, wait, Shonda Rhimes. Shonda. Oh shit.
It's all
It's
right.
all good,
She,
man.
no,
It'll kill
she's
you.
oh fuck. Anyway, I, I'm forgetting what it's called, but um,
All good.
you get the idea.
Jamie?
The history of
Sorry.
marriage is not, is
Mm,
not exactly
mm.
something we want to like get back to, right?
Oh
I
yeah,
think like
especially like yeah.
and that's where my whole problem with like any kind of you know let's make America great again, or let's get back to traditional values. Well, okay,
Family
cool.
values.
If we want to go back to 1950 or whatever it was, Eisenhower had a 90% tax rate on right
On the
90% tax
rich,
rate
yeah.
on the highest earners, and redistribute wealth that
That's
way.
nice. Yeah,
Cool,
very good.
cool, but also let's not go back to having black people drinking out of different water fountains, you
Of
know,
course, yeah.
and let's not go back to redlining neighborhoods,
Mm,
and
mm.
listen, there's like lots of let's not go back to not wearing seatbelts in cars.
Of course, yeah. Oh
Well,
my
this is
God.
the problem with trying to put an agenda on a red hat, or any hat for that matter. It doesn't go into the details of what you're actually talking about, and then
Totally.
when the party doesn't even address exactly what they're talking about in terms of how it relates to other people, other demographics in their own society, then it leads one to believe, oh, okay, they're clearly all racist. But let's go back further downstream than the advent of agriculture, aka advent of marriage and
Whoa,
property,
bro, you're going
and
back, man.
look at families like they were before. I'm not going to necessarily agree with everything, obviously, that someone like Christopher Ryan says about how communities lived, or anthropologists say
Damn.
how but we lived in
Mm,
tribes of no more than 150 people where everyone knew each other, and
Mm.
um, uh, uh, who your father was in terms of you know biology wasn't even that important back
mm,
in these tribes. Everyone, it really was a village raising the younger generation.
mm,
I mean, yeah, mothers breastfed their babies and whatever, but but it really was the whole community. And there's still even obviously civilizations, or communities today, I should say, and civilizations where it's still very similar to that. There's tribes and various different
mm,
continents that still use this, but even in more advanced, or I don't even say advanced, but even more modern societies like Italians. You go to Italy. There's a real village there. There's a real
oh yeah,
sense of
European society, yeah,
community there. So
for sure.
that's, to me, is even better than the two-parent household. You know what I mean? So
Mm,
maybe
mm. Oh yeah,
what we need to be
village takes
going
a
back
village.
to, yeah, maybe what we need to be going back to is before even there was marriage. But again, this is a whole unraveling that's happened since
Oh
the
yeah.
advent of property and agriculture, if you will. I mean, there's obviously pluses of agriculture. We get fed,
Mm, mm,
but
mm,
this whole heredity uh, thing being mixed into it. Well, this is my property now. I only want
mm,
people who
mm,
came from my generation, who came from my seed for this. I want this land to go to them only. Then we start getting the problems stemming from that, as we see in society today. So I mean, I don't know how far. So I mean, to you, Lucas, the breakdown of the family. It's to me, it's a continuation of what's been going on since that time period.
So from the Paleolithic perspective,
Yeah.
kind of, and
from like 11,000 years ago. I mean, what was happening in 11, 12,000?
Paleo with our communities.
Listen,
we already went paleo with the diets, right?
Yeah, dude, why not?
I think some ways we're going to be forced there, or we're going to go there willingly. Einstein said that I don't know what weapons the Third World War will be fought with, but I bet the Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones. That's where we are now. And if we're living in a world of sticks and stones again, I bet you communities will coalesce like they were before the advent of agriculture. But that's just my.
Well, I think you're onto something really important there too, and I have lamented this as I've gone through my adulthood now. I'll be 44 in a few months. I got kids who are 13 and almost 10, and while my wife was 6 months pregnant, we moved away from Boston, away from my family, to Austin, Texas, where we had like 2 friends. They were really good friends, but they didn't have kids and they didn't understand. And when we had kids, all of a sudden our connection to them kind of really got weaker, and our whole scene, we had like no support. Same thing happened when we moved to Chicago 4 years later after our second kid was born. We had like no support and no community to lean on, to lean into. And we had to build that, like one person at a time. and we did, but it was very, very hard. And then we moved here. And again, like no support, no community. My mother-in-law moved here, and it made a huge difference to have her around. And I envy some of these people who like grow up and have their family. Like I know a family in Palo Alto who the mother and like the matriarch of that family and the patriarch who's been dead for a while now were Stanford people, right? The patriarch was like a Stanford whatever research guy, and they have one of these old like Eicher, is it Manfred Eicher, Eichler.
Yeah,
the Eichler one of those houses, in Palo Alto.
Palo Alto's laden with them. Yeah,
they got for like $25,000 or something in 1960, right? And now it's worth like they could sell it for $5 million. You get like 3 relatively small bedrooms. Like it's not that much of a house. It's cool, but anyway. They have the nice atriums, out of whack, right? I have a hard time not tangenting from points because you go to one point and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, and shit is so out of whack. Look at that. But anyway, back to the point is that then like she had 3-4 kids, and all of them are adults in their 50s and live in Palo Alto, and they have like built-in, they all have kids, some of them have grandkids. They're like they're a built-in community for each other, and then their extended communities and their friends are built in, and interwoven, and the support network that they have. I'm freezing. Are you guys freezing?
Yeah, you're crackling a little bit there, but I got you.
Yeah.
You were crackling a little bit there, but I got you.
Anyway, the point being that I'm envious of that kind of built-in support network, and that's like an old school traditional value family kind of thing, right? People used to grow up and live near their family, and and nowadays, like sometimes parents who become grandparents will actually move to support their kids and their grandkids.
We lost Lucas.
Yeah, we lost Lucas. Darn it.
We'll get him back.
And that's, that's areas.
There you go.
And that's really cool. Uh, but but when we're talking about like what's happened with modern society, and this is kind of like a more macro theme for me, is that like there's just so much added stress in the world. And one of those factors is more disconnection and community, less community like connection. And I think when you see, you see oftentimes like other communities kind of take that role, right? That like more traditionally family and extended family had, and that could be really positive things, like your after school music program that you go to, or it could be really negative things like gangs that that are hawking drugs, and or it could be it could be church. A lot of communities, it's church.
Mm.
That's the connection. And I think when you look at like traditionally marginalized communities, like in particular, I'm looking at like urban Black communities, right? Church is huge, and family sticks around a lot of the time, um, because that's how they stay connected and stay supported and like make it through the stress that's
Mm.
inherent to their kind of uh, circumstantial existence in this country.
It was
Um,
the only place they could commune for so long.
well, yeah, sure, and there's historical roots to it, right? I think that at this time period right now, with the pandemic, with the economic stress, um, and the like government doesn't give a shit about you kind of vibe that's going on, um, for at least most of 2020. I think that millions of white people uh, are finally experiencing something, this level of stress and disconnection, um, that is like relatively new for people like me to like really have to face. We've been able to like in general, like, and this is not just a race thing, right? It's like kind of a class thing, probably
Mm.
more than a race thing.
More
But
class oriented.
of course,
It seems
there
like
are
it.
correlations there. But anyway, the that we're having to face this feeling of like uncertainty and disconnection, and then like we don't have a strong community necessarily to lean into and to get that support from, and so you're seeing a lot of disconnection, and a lot of people feeling like kind of I don't know, like just sad, desperate,
Hopeless a
Mm.
lot of times.
hopeless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cynical.
Yeah. We've
cynical,
been
absolutely.
isolated away. We've been taken away from our communities in a way. I mean, under lockdown, this is just obviously people, this is why you see like the spikes. People are just getting that. It's kind of like a sickness, psychological sickness. They can't handle these conditions anymore. And rightfully so. Like, I think we are like, we need to be in our communities. We need to be competing with each other. And especially like in our line of work as musicians, I mean, it's like the rug was pulled from underneath our feet. And existing in this environment is so, yeah, so much, there's so much stress, and we feel this adversity. Like, I was out with a friend during Thanksgiving and I bought him dinner, and we were at Boston Market, and basically it was like, in some ways, I want to draw like a parallel to what it must have, in a very small way, it probably parallels what it must have been like to, when my ancestors, like a generation ago, were sitting in like, food lines in Eastern Europe, waiting for food. We were literally there for like the whole day waiting, and they ran out of turkey. So I mean, we were fixed on getting some chicken, so it was all good. But yeah, we were literally there for like 4 hours standing in line, dude. And but we finally got our dinner. So And that's happening on the regular now with lockdown restrictions here in California. Just you're standing at the grocery store, and it's on average like an hour to get into the store, because they got to limit the amount of people. So just some little thing there, just dealing with that kind of issue on a daily basis can really be difficult.
I still feel privileged even with these problems that we're talking about as an American, because, those in the Soviet Union, those in the Iron Curtain, behind the Iron Curtain, I should say, didn't have this hope. Well, there's a vaccine coming. In about 6 months, 9 months' time, there's going to be, a possibility at least of us seeing things kind of turn back to a new normalcy. Obviously, normal is not even, doesn't even make sense at this point.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many different perspectives.
So
never be as normal as it was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of branches we can go off from what you two just said.
Yeah. I do think as musicians, like this disruption of community is like devastating for a lot of people, especially people who don't have families, right? Like I've got this built-in kind of like
tribe.
Tribe, sure. Yeah, people who like they need me, I need them. We're, there's like this like interconnectedness and interdependence. And so even on that tiny little level of family, like, yeah, we all feel the disconnection from friends and from the activities that we were, engaged in that are either limited or gone right now. But we have each other. I've got a lot of musician friends who, and you guys can speak to this directly. Neither of you has a spouse or kids, and so like I know people who are in those shoes who have had a very, very hard time emotionally, psychologically, through this period of time. And I think a lot of it is that disillusion of community. We just don't have that built-in thing that we can lean on, and as musicians, we've built that around our gigging and our teaching communities, right? The people we go to work with and we hang out with, and those are our brothers and sisters, and we're and like the people we teach are kind of almost are like our kids, and
it's all gone.
Yeah, man. And then it's like, okay, you get a little bit of it on a screen, or you send somebody a track and you record, and it's cool, and there's like a moment of connection. But man, we've lost just like something multi-layered and like fundamental to that feeling of connectedness in our lives.
Yeah, I think part of it is also an acceptance of the platforms that have replaced a lot of even just the mundane, casual encounters we would have with each other. I see you on Facebook. That's cool. We'll talk there, and then here we are, a pandemic where I wonder if we didn't have those platforms, how much the lockdowns would have happened to the degree that they're happening. How much smarter we would have been about realizing, well, we can't just shut down 2/3 of the businesses for a year. How much of all of that would have been in the cards? I think we would have. Parts of me think we would have handled this better without our 1 degree off of the path that social media has taken us off of. We're in a completely different destination we would have been in otherwise. So I don't know, man. There's a continuous breakdown of let's put it this way. There's a continuous fragmentation process that's happening that I still don't see turning back the other way in any significant way. So
what are you referring to exactly? Like in culture? You think just
in culture, families, just in society in general, in human interaction between cultures, within cultures, between families, within families.
Mm.
it's a continuous thing, and it feels, I feel like we're coming to a head here. There's going to be a real widespread recognition that, okay, this is probably not in our best interest, because look what's, I mean, how far
Continue
do we
down that
continue
trajectory.
need to go? Yeah, I mean, how far do we need to go down this road?
When you're saying this, I'm imagining like social media as a primary aspect of what you're saying. That people connect into social media, they connect into other forms of technology, and in particular, uh,
Even the way we shop, Amazon, we don't go to the
Oh yeah.
stores anymore.
right,
Every interaction, think about it, man.
right.
We could all just sit in our houses like little fucking couch potato and get things delivered to us. I mean, all we need is someone to stand there and feed us without needing to raise our arms up. I mean,
Just
how
wait.
far is this shit gonna
The
go?
robots are coming, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Right,
I mean, look
right.
at
Well, yeah.
Japan. Look at Japan, man. These robots are designed for companion reasons, actually, not
Mm-mm.
not necessarily for cool. Look at us. No, they have a declining population. Their average age is like in mid 40s or something like that. You know, they're not replenishing their population.
Mm.
Actually, America's is in the same predicament, just not quite as severe yet. But our population is declining. You know,
Mm.
on top of being less connected to each other. And more polarized than ever. It's hard to
Mm.
know whether it's just one of these 80, 90-year cycles, or if it's really just like a 10,000-year cycle of humanity that needs to finally
Mm.
turn back around and
Mm.
and realize what the hell got us to this point in the first place.
Mm.
How many hundreds of thousands of years did we live in communities before finally this last spigot of little speck of time in comparison, we're completely divided now.
Mm.
And the population has gone exponentially out of control. You know, in some lands. But anyway, I
Mm.
don't know. I'm always trying to look at things from an extremely broad
Mm.
perspective and
Mm.
from a zoomed out, and then zoom in real quick to look at the problem, but then try to keep it in perspective.
Mm.
Anyway,
Yeah, this is a macro micro thing, right? It's like, you know, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily read this stuff that I wrote, but it just
please
I'm
do.
just gonna
Mm.
riff
Yeah.
off of it, which is
Mm.
which is that like when we talk about like we this and we that, as in like humanity, or as in like the United States, we we this and we that. It's
We the
like,
people.
you know, there's always like some truth that we're speaking to, right? But also it's like never really fully accurate, because it's lumping people into categories, and oftentimes it's ascribing intentions, like macro intentions, to those groups of people. It's assume, and I think like intellectually, I'm totally guilty of this. I'm not criticizing either of you personally, but I'm just reflecting
It's
on
okay if
this.
you are.
Is it like, no? I think that it's assuming a kind of almost like an intellectually superior kind of stance, um, because it's like, it's basically assuming the ability to like critique and describe the macro, as if we really understand it, but when we
Mm-mm.
speak at the macro, or about the macro, we're speaking about something that we don't actually really understand. We're just aiming at some aspect of it, and so like I just think we got to be really really humble, when we do talk about the macro, which is what you were talking
Mm.
about, Dana, right? It's like, you know, always, you know, going back and forth,
Mm.
zooming in, zooming out, and I guess, first of all, like when we're talking about this stuff, it's always opinion, right? I mean, we're and like also,
Someone's opinion.
yeah, and also like we don't necessarily know the truth, as it pertains to all of the people or realities that fall within that macro topic. So, like, first of all, like I'm totally admitting that like I talk about macro. I'm personally drawn towards macro philosophy, spirituality, like social critique, cultural studies, activism. I've been drawn to that my whole adult life. But I don't find that macro level thinking and or action, honestly, serves me very well. I just like micro realities and relationships and actions and thinking.
Mm.
Those all have like immediately
Tangible,
measurable
yeah. Mm.
outcomes. Right? So if I treat you with disdain, there's disconnection, right? If I treat you with respect, there's connection. If I practice the piano, I'm going to make progress on my music. Right? If I call someone, like we actually talk. If I
Mm.
do spiritual practice or exercise, like I get a boost in my day. If I have an argument, like I was talking about with my wife, if I have an argument with a loved one, we still have an opportunity to work it out and learn from it and grow from it. So if I'm making a wrong assumption about, one of you guys, like you can check me and correct me. All of that is like, is like micro realities, and that's where there's like an actual chance for things to like be dynamic in the sense that there's energy moving, there's things happening.
I think with that approach, you can be more, or you can try to be more accurate when you do extend out into the macro level, like discussion. I think the more that you're homing in on the micro level, everything that's really within your power to control and those relationships, those interactions, then I think in just having conversation like this, we're better suited than to maybe discuss things and try to hit the target, on macro level kind of topics. I don't know.
I'm a bit agnostic at whether it even makes sense to apply micro rules to macro situations.
Mm.
I'm still agnostic about that because
Mm-hmm.
uh, to get a whole group of mess of people to agree on one thing is not easy.
Well, that's part of the point, right? Is that in the micro we don't, right? We have conflict, but we can also like then,
Work it out.
work things out. Yeah.
There's conversation. Well, it's by nature the fact that we're talking about people we don't know intimately like that. Just from that stance is going to cause a breakdown in the tenor of the conversation that needs to happen in order to get to some kind of reasonable goal. To me, it's the breakdown of conversations, the breakdown of actual real respectful. It doesn't have to be respectful, but real honest conversations. Real honest conversations between differing points of views. We have all these choirs. Hey there, we have all these choirs that are being preached to by their preachers. But what happens when a Buddhist comes into the church? Then it's like whatever. Blasphemy. I mean, there has been obviously movements towards even unity amongst religious organizations to various different degrees of success. But
Religion's a great context for this. So right, the macro versus the micro, right? It's like we're in the macro world of religion, of like the thinking of the narrative of creation and what happens before life and after life and et cetera, right? All those like macro ideas are like places where there's divides, right? But then if you just get into behavior between people, right? Like actually the micro of religion is like, treat each other and with like love and respect, compassion, and yeah, there's some differences, and we could learn from each other. I mean, I've learned a lot from Buddhist teaching, even though I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not never been a practicing Buddhist, but some of the practices are actually like really beneficial for me. And those are like the micro, and I suppose like another way to look at this is concrete and abstract. When we get into the world of the abstract, we start to untether from realities that are actually like are the most meaningful, which is just like, what are we doing? Like,
Yes. What are we doing? So, to
Questioning
continue,
reality.
well, now the effectiveness of our conversations in, let's say, micro or macro communities, smaller macro communities. It's now, okay, let me just get to the heart of the matter here.
Yeah.
Okay. The relationship that really matters in terms of the effectiveness of these conversations and these differences between us as cultures and human beings, the relationship we need to be focusing on, or that I think needs really special focus, especially right now, is the relationship between the powers and the people that are being ruled over.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the separation of the powers, if you will, the red and the blues perhaps, and the conversations that they have and the disagreements that they have, and how that projects to the people that they represent in society. This is all fucked up, man. We're taking their word for it, whatever color you most identify with. Maybe not us in this conversation, but in general. We're looking. Oh yeah, these blue guys, they hate the red guys because this is, and we lob on to that, to all of this whole pull down menu, to use a term from Eric Weinstein, of ideas. And it's like, if you don't fit into any of these topics in this pull down menu, you're go away.
Right.
And really,
registered independent since I was 18.
Yeah, me too. I became a Democrat for a month or something like that to vote for Bernie Sanders in the primaries in 2016, and I couldn't change back quick enough, honestly.
Even though he was an independent.
Yeah,
He's functioning as
you know what I
Democrat.
mean? It's like, what the hell? And even someone like that felt, in order to be relevant in the conversation, he had to pick a side. Fuck that shit, man.
Well,
the problem to me
that's
is
a structure, right?
That's a structure, and the problem to me is not the fierce division that we have between blue and red. To me, that's a distraction between the fierce division we have between the red and the blue powers, between the people they're powering over, people they have authority over.
Creating a lot of dissonance, unwanted dissonance, cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, the more we're not, those of us who aren't in the power structure are divided, the more power they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it, Howard Zinn and Chomsky and many, great thinkers and writers don't mean to just name two old white men, but
No.
they're some of the classics, But
yeah, for sure.
I mean, many social critiques have been
I'm a soul
level towards this, right? The divide and conquer and the the kind of the false reality of the division in order to prop up the power structures. And I mean, that, it was kind of designed that way structurally, our American government, honestly. It was like the ownership class that was like designing the government in order to make sure that the ownership class would be able to maintain power. And so it's like it's baked in to the whole
dude, it seems
structure.
logical, like they think, I mean, if you look at like statistically, like, do we even want to talk about IQ, and then like the people in power assuming wanting to maintain power because obviously they have all the knowledge, they have all the facts, or hopefully they're educated enough and they know that, you know, a majority of people have this IQ and we're not even talking about color, race, or anything. We're just talking about purely IQ and just like who are suited for what jobs, and people like can only think as far as they are cognitively able to. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you think they're functioning on that level where they're just trying to force feed us worse, you know?
I don't think they give a shit about IQ personally. They're just like, this is who we are, we have power, and we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure we have it. That this class has it. That's it. They're not gonna be. I don't
They don't want society to work as well as efficiently as possible based on all the different parameters. I mean,
there's a long and complicated history of like the bullshit science justifications for the stratification of society, and IQ, some of that, race, some of that. Which like that's the origin of race. Basically, is like dude who was like, I got to find a way to lump all these, like completely diverse African people together,
right,
so that we can justify, using them for, cheap or slave labor. And so, I mean, it's anyway.
The Portuguese,
it's
man,
totally
right?
bogus science. There's, so much bogus science. What's the eugenics?
Eugenics, yeah dude, that came from America, man.
Bogus science, man. But I mean, I'm laughing about it, but it's super dark, man. And
real,
and that is real. Like, actually, even Trump has been quoted. From I saw an interview where he was talking about his genes and how great they are. And like, there are people still in power today who believe that like genetics, that race, that gender, that IQ, those things like basically justify the stratifications of power in society.
These are convenient thoughts for those who have power.
Yeah,
these are very convenient thoughts for people who have power or even have status over another group of population. Indentured servants were black and white at one point, and then they said, oh, hold on, let's make these white indentured servants feel like they're better than the black ones, and boom, here we are. And here we are still perpetuating that shit.
That's it. They created whiteness in order to fuck with class solidarity, basically.
You know how many countries all of us have been in Europe, and you never hear this fucking Yo,
they're saying hi.
You got a party happening.
So anyway, it's just, it's the fragmentation, it's the illusory fragmentation, honestly, that we all buy into. That's just, it sickens me, and it more sickens me from, if you will, for lack of a better term, the blue side, because they should fucking know better by now.
Well, they're leading the way, right? Their ideas are supposed to be what's leading us forward. And I agree with you, man, fully.
Completely incapable.
That's dangerous to talk about, though, California.
I don't give a fuck where I am and who hears it. It's a completely ridiculous line of thinking, regardless of how ridiculous, obviously, the other side is. Regardless. Because they're wrong doesn't make you right on every fucking thing that comes out of your ears. Everything that comes out of your head.
I feel like there's just too much of like the whole, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys kind of vibe. There's an antagonist, there's a protagonist. And that's just like, so they're pushing that, I think both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting sucked into some of these like comparisons of the police force at the Black Lives Matter protest versus the police force at January 6th, and I mean there's some real truth to that, to the disparity and the disparity of treatment, but
What percentage though? What
well,
amount is the question?
oh, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a disparity, but I found myself starting to say like, we better have like basically like fucking tanks in the streets, and then I'm like, holy shit! I caught myself, like I am becoming what I despise, right? Like police state, fucking, clamp down on the people I disagree with or the people I'm scared of,
I'm telling you,
right?
man, this is the
And
hardest issue you got to deal with. This is free speech issue. This
Oh
freedom of
man.
expression issue is the hardest one for laymen to get in this country. Why it's important.
yeah, no, I mean, I think like if people are laying pipe bombs
Yeah, this is obviously a
at
different situation.
inauguration,
Oh yeah.
like you need the FBI on this shit, and yeah, you
There's
may
got to be
need,
regulation.
if thousands of people are gonna come with
Yeah.
AKs to the inauguration, or like,
And there is that potential.
yeah, we need like real armed force to meet that, right?
For sure.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that we create, the police state that the left gets to now create the police state that they, have been railing against for generations, right?
Listen, the wind always changes direction. Look at the 44 motherfuckers before this orange one. Okay? They were all different shades of fruits. Okay? We had a dark plum. That was beautiful, nice and juicy. But then we had some fucking white peaches up in that bitch for a long ass time. All right, I'm sorry. I'm not going to take that any further. But you know what I'm saying, man.
All good, brother.
You know what I'm saying? We've had them reds and we've had them blues that they always switch. Now, these laws may be convenient now, but wait till the second. Imagine Trump having these laws you're trying to enact. What else do I need to say here?
Right, and you're just like you're playing with power, back and forth, back and forth. I got the power, you got the power, I got the power, right? There, I don't know, what the solutions are in this in the political universe. Like, I have dreams of things, of different systems and systemic changes.
You know I got dreams, dude.
Yeah,
Come on now.
But I do
5
think,
Americas. Come on. We need 5 Americas.
I don't know. I do think that like one of the key things here, and there have been, there's been a lot of rhetoric around it that's like kind of annoying, but I think there's reality to like accountability, man. There's got to be a leaning into accountability on all levels. And that includes like our, racial history in this country, and it includes the political corruption.
But we're falling right back down the same hole with that, though. Who is worthy of choosing these ramifications, this accountability?
The people who
bipartisan
didn't.
class or should decide, or the party who's in control right now should decide.
I mean,
question.
first of all, I don't.
This is not disagreeing with accountability, by the way.
No, yeah, but
it's just who administers the accountability. Is my question.
Well, accountability is different than punishment. Like
Okay,
when
what do you mean by that?
I'm
That's
in
a
an
different
argument and I've said some mean shit to my wife.
Yeah.
Like accountability is not her like getting to slap me or her getting to like berate me back. Accountability is me saying, I am so sorry. Like, I know what I said was like devastatingly hurtful, and I never want to say that kind of shit again. I'm so sorry. I see what that did to you. I see that, and I take responsibility for it, and I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on that myself so that behavior never comes up again. Now, we could do that in this country on more macro levels, or we could say, as a political body, the leadership in Washington could say, we acknowledge what has been done systemically to the Native American community, to the Black community, to whatever, right? And to the working class. And we are going to make amends for that and try to make sure that it never happens again, because we recognize the the different factors that went into those things, and we're going to change systems and structures, and we're going to try to make up for it, at least in some small way, that shows that we recognize that things got fucked up and out of hand.
Now, admittedly, on the micro, you volunteered what you rightly saw was a deserving apology. I don't see either side apologizing for anything that they're doing right now.
That's why we need a marriage counselor. That's why we need the giant American marriage counselor.
Who's that counselor? Winnie the Pooh over in China?
I don't know, man.
Maybe Russell Brand.
Funny enough, Russell Brand's kind of been really on point the past couple of years. But
yeah, I like him.
Yeah.
He's been through a lot, man. He has an interesting perspective.
Definitely,
for sure,
most definitely. So we can't. So there's no therapist for America. What do we do? What do we do? What's
That's why I turn back to the micro all the time.
Yeah. Well, so when the micro can't apply, I'm sorry, it's just really loud. When it can't apply to the macro, what do we do then? I mean, so the other thing that is not lost on me is when you look at the 1690s, the 1770s, the 1860s, the 1940s, those last 4 crisis points, if you will, in American history, every single one of them, to get through it, resulted in a stronger government, a stronger authority. You know what I'm saying? Here we are, again, 80 years later, in another crisis point, a period, if you will. How do we really want the government to become more involved in our lives and more of an authority over us than they have been? Is that really the solution? This is what's rubbing against me. This is why I'm entertaining the thoughts of secession, or excuse me, better yet, a divorce. What's the grounds? Peaceful. What do they call this when you get divorced? But it's differences, unreconcilable differences.
Unreconcilable differences.
Right. It's like the regions in the country have grown up. They're over 18 now. It's time for them to choose what they want to do with their own fucking lives. Because trying to make this shit work together, to me, just it seems insane. And the solution to keeping us together seems like more infringement on liberty, which is, I'm sorry, the Statue of Liberty out there in the harbor by where I'm staying right now is, to me, a fuck ton more important than anything that these red and blue dressed motherfuckers in DC are trying to administer, or trying to, whatever narrative they're trying to create for us to sink our teeth in. They're not thinking about liberty, I tell you that much. They're not thinking about liberty for everyone in this country. They're not seeing people who disagree with them as, quite frankly, being worthy of the kind of liberty we're talking about. If you disagree, you can be anything except have a different point of view on the left. That's where we're for diversity of everything except for thought. That's what it seems like on the left. And on the right, it's just a fucking, I don't know. That's a whole other disaster I don't even want to get into. To framing, I think the problems over there are completely obvious. I mean, there's no recognition of science half the time on that side, whether if the science is being wrongly construed or not. There's not even a recognition. You guys are flying in tubes in the sky on airplanes. You can't agree.
Discussing ideas like QAnon, it's
totally just gone. Like give me
absurd.
And again, that's not everyone on that side. There are economic reasons. There's very smart economists on that side that I think also don't need to be ignored. Them, Lucas, Thomas. There's a few others.
Thomas Sowell, Glenn Lowry.
Although when they talk about social issues, we can talk having a whole other conversation about that. But at the end of the day, there's no real. Again, back to I think to my original point from the very beginning of this whole conversation, I don't see a real conversation happening between the obvious lines of fragmentation, between each side of the fragmentation that's happening. A show like Firing Line, William F. Buckley's show where he was talking to liberals all the time on his show. I mean, where's the equivalent of that, where people aren't screaming their head off and completely ignoring what the person's saying when they're not speaking to come up with a good one-liner that'll try to devastate them with, like, give me a fucking break, man.
Yeah.
Like, learn how to steel man your other person, your opponent's argument, and get down in the mud and talk about it, because this shit's madly important. Don't try you're winning an argument at the expense of actual unity is ruining everything. Rachel Maddow, Sean Hannity.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, and there's there's a lot of complexities too. Like,
yeah, there is.
If somebody, if somebody like abuses you, and then you're mad about it, and you're trying to hold them accountable for it, and then they say like,
right, sorry, go back.
They say like, why, you being mad about this doesn't make it any better. You have to be nice to me now, in order for us to get along and for me not to abuse you anymore. It's like, it doesn't work. And so like, there has to be, reconciliation between sides that feel aggrieved and abused, and that goes a lot of directions in our country. And it's easy to just like say you're the boogeyman because X, but the grievances are actually very complex, and on the extremes of both sides of the political spectrum right now, the media figures like you're talking about have done a good job of boogeymanning the other side, and then like getting masses of people to just be like, it's all boogeyman, but it's actually like really fucking complex economic issues, and like structural problems that take like deep fucking problem solving. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah.
I would like to leave us on the note of like, first of all, I'm so glad we're having these conversations, and second of all, I really see the hopeful perspective on the world right now, in that like we need problem solving, and if we can all be in that mindset of like, seeing problems and trying to solve problems together, then like for the betterment of all, then we can make progress. And yeah, progress has always been halted and incremental and back and forth, and what some people consider progress, other people consider tyranny, and what other people consider oppression, other people consider stability, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're gonna have to have those those arguments on micro and macro levels, but like an orientation towards problem solving, I think, is absolutely crucial right now for everybody, because we're on the precipice of major fucking problems, not just like racism and like a bunch of fucking goons with AK-47s. We're on the precipice of mass starvations and water shortages.
Economic, all around the world, there's big problems.
Yeah, this pandemic is just the first of what could be, an ongoing slew of pandemics potentially. We like, once you start having sea levels rise to where like urban center populations of millions and millions of people on the coastlines of dozens of countries are getting overwhelmed and having to go somewhere. We have like hundreds of millions of refugees. We're in deep problems land. Agricultural norms are shifting as the climate changes, and like automation or
Yeah.
automatization.
Yes. Yes.
Is like going to
Yeah.
Automation.
completely
Yeah.
automation is going to completely devastate our traditional workforce. It's already doing it. I mean, these are like major issues that are like right on the horizon, that are already starting.
We're on the precipice.
Pandemic, it should be considered a canary in the coal mine, and
I think
and
it's
so
sped
we
us
need problem solving.
sped this all up though to where we need to acknowledge those. We have to look those problems face to face right now. Like the pandemic kind of just made everything go faster, and we need to, now is the time to act and really like face the beast.
I got my fingers
Hey,
crossed
man.
that Joe Biden is going to be a unifying leader, that he's going to do his best to do that, and that I mean, that's been the crux of his campaign the whole time. And
We
it's part
need
of the
him
reason
to.
the left didn't like him. It's part of the reason I kind of didn't like him that much, because I'm like, I want somebody radical who's like really pushing for progressive change and values. But the more I see our reality emerging as it is, the more I think like maybe Joe Biden's the right person. He's
I still think it was Andrew Yang, because he talked to both sides, and both sides felt like human beings.
I wish
And
I
just
wish
don't-
that
I didn't see that from many other people.
yeah, I wish that Biden would get Andrew Yang in his cabinet. I don't know. I think he's done most of his cabinet already. But yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, you guys.
Anyway,
I
yeah,
love you.
let's continue.
It's great to
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
To be continued. Let's like shoot some messages back and forth, come up with some next topics, and I will I'll post this recording on my Google Drive and send you guys a link so we can watch it.
Cool.
And then we can have a discussion about like, oh, you know what, that's really cool, let's just put it out, or let's not do anything with that, or let's take 35 minutes to 65 minutes and put that out, whatever.
Edit it. Yeah. Or just, dude, this is dress rehearsal. If anything, it's just helping us,
Yeah.
get to that point where
we didn't even
more
talk on
comfortable.
on the two of the topics anyway. So
Yeah. I know, yeah, free speech and yeah.
Dope, man. All right, let's
All right,
to be continued to the
Great.
next time.
Think about a name for this too.
Yeah.
got to brand it somehow.
The problem is ?
Ooh, I like that. You got to look up and see if that's already a thing. That sounds like a thing.
I have a feeling it is, but if it isn't,
Check it out. Yeah. I'll
Question
think
mark
too,
on both
Lukash,
ends.
You think?
There you go. Love
All
you
right,
guys. Thank you.
Take care.